Hi, we are here with Peter McGraw, who is the founder of the Hurl Research Lab at CU Boulder. Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. So you've got a research lab that studies humor.
Yes.
So tell me what that is, and then tell me some things that have come out of that lab.
So the Humor Research Lab it's a scientific lab with its roots in social and cognitive psychology, and it's designed to understand what makes things funny and the implications for living a better life.
And were you the founder of the lab originally?
I was, yeah. So maybe the best 45 minutes I've ever spent was brainstorming the name for the lab and figuring out the acronym.
I'm trying to think of the best 45 minutes I've ever spent, but I don't know. I don't know.
Professionally, let's say.
I mean, and then from there, as soon as you came up with HURL, the acronym, were you like, this is how I get a research grant? The money starts flowing now.
I give this advice, which is not everybody should be trying to be funny. It actually depends on how skilled you are.
Yeah, I think I should bring you around to some open mics with me in Los Angeles. I read in an article that you said that there's a way to sort of apply humor in accomplishing goals.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to, I'm just going to take some notes while you tell me more about that. Just for my own curiosity, how can I do that?
Yes, right. So the third paper I'm working on there's a group of three of us, the same people who wrote the paper you're referring to, and it's our attempt to talk about how comedy can help people either achieve or inhibit important goals that they have, living a more pleasurable life, having better relationships, getting things done, whatever that might be. So I think if you're highly skilled, have at it. You should try to cultivate it, but you should be doing the same thing that stand-up comics do, which is test and revise. So what's working, with whom? If it's working, keep doing it. If it's not working, either drop it or revise it. And so trying to figure that out. Now, the difference between me as a teacher and you as a stand-up comic is, I've seen your stand-up, so I think I'm right here. Your primary purpose is for people to laugh, and then your secondary purpose is for people to think differently about the world.
Yes.
Me as a teacher, my primary purpose is to get people to think differently about the world, and then secondly, get the laughs.
Right.
And so you never lose sight of that.
Of the goal, right. And maybe even so, for you, are you saying that when you teach, that's the order of the goal, is 1, 2, and that if I am keeping with my goal as in 1, 2, then that's based on what those two professions are, is the track to success for both?
Yes. There are exceptions. I don't know if you've noticed this, but so to me there's two exceptions in stand-up today that are really striking. So the first one is Three Mics, Neil Brennan's recent special on Netflix.
Yep.
So I interviewed him for my podcast.
Oh, cool.
And we talked at length about one of the mics, which was called Emotional Stuff.
Yeah.
It's the least funny part of the show, but it's the best part of the show.
Yeah.
And then the second one is Nanette, which starts off as a stand-up show, first half, and then gets very serious.
Yeah.
I think those are two examples that show that stand-up doesn't have to be traditionally stand-up to be good. There has to be enough laughs, but you can get serious, and audiences can appreciate it.
Do you almost feel like there is, I don't know, I think I might have this theory that there's almost like, I guess the first word that comes to mind is like a richer laugh, or like a more earned laugh, because of the catharsis that comes from when you finally get the laugh from things like that?
Yeah. So here's how I describe it. So I think that there's what I call ha-ha and aha. So ha-ha is what we tend to study in the Humor Research Lab. It arises from from the perception that something is wrong yet okay.
Right,
so what we call a benign violation.
Ha ha. Okay.
Ha ha. So dick jokes, ha ha.
Yep.
You know, kind of thing. Doesn't have to be anything, but aha comes from a moment of insight, a flash, a recognition, where something comes together and you solve a problem.
Mm-hmm. Even when I hear that, I'm like, aha, this is making sense.
That's it. And aha is pleasurable. So
right.
Solving a crossword puzzle creates aha.
Aha. Right.
Pleasurable to get 6 across.
Right.
It's pleasurable to solve a problem of some kind. What I think you might be describing, you could tell me, is when you bring the dick joke and the puzzle together.
Right.
And you create a benign violation that solves a problem, and people are both, it's like the applause break you often get. I think that sort of, there's something comes together that is funny and seems right.
Right. And it also, there's probably, I think, an element of surprise that comes from that too, when you think of the ha-ha and you think of the dick joke and you think about starting to laugh there. And then when you end up with the aha, that's almost, you're right, it is the literal applause break there. Because it's those two things coming together.
Yes, and people acknowledging that.
Right. And almost agreeing with you, you know?
Yes. I think it's impossible to have an applause break with people not agreeing with you.
Yeah, right.
I think they have to agree.
Yeah, so I have this joke, and I always say that, I mean, I still work on it, and sometimes I, like, throw it in the garbage because it doesn't work, or it's the crowd, or whatever, but I have a joke where I say, I saw a little boy playing with a doll recently, and I went up to the parents and I said something because it was just so weird. I was like, aren't you concerned that if your son plays with a doll that he might grow up and become, like, a good father? Like, we're just going to have, you know, in 25 years, there's going to be a bunch of little boys, like a bunch of grown men taking care of their children. You know, so, and every time, if it falls flat, I go, I sort of give up on the audience if it falls flat. And I'm like, and then I can feel myself getting angry. And I'm like, and I always felt like when that joke works, it works so well because people get so, you know, if the crowd is in fact nervous that I'm going to say something about a little boy playing with a doll that makes them uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable. And then when they realize that I'm on their side, they laugh. But it's so risky because if that audience isn't on my side, then that's where I think all of that, like you said, I keep working at it as if I'm going to find the solution to it that will make all audiences, that it will work every time.
Yeah.
Is that never going to happen? Is that why you just went?
Yeah. I think
because
it's hard
why?
To make, I think it's a good joke. I think the premise. I think the premise is good. The problem is the premise doesn't work with all audiences.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's that thing where, like, from my marketing management perspective, I'm like, this is just targeting, right? It's just like, what is the profile of the consumer? And based upon their needs, wants, beliefs, culture, they're going to either want that joke or not want that joke.
And I think when I started writing it, I felt like everybody would be on my side at some point in that joke, but that it wouldn't work because they would never stay on that side. Is that the ultimate thing? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love the idea of workshopping this joke on this.
It didn't really occur to me until you started saying it, but I was like, let's just toss it out, see if we can fix it.
I think this is my reaction to it, and this, I have the luxury of tenure and time, which is, I think an interesting challenge for that joke is to think, how could I make it universally acceptable to audiences?
Right.
And so, well, how might that be? You know, so I think of some comics who have these techniques, right? So one technique is like, I'm going to create analogous situations, right? So you're basically doing a reversal in that joke,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
the reversal is that you're going to, it's everybody's expecting a critique and then you compliment, right? You do the opposite.
Right.
Right? So is there a set of things that you can do when parents go against the norm and it turns out well?
Right.
So they break a rule and it turns out well.
Or
right? So
even maybe there's like a traditionally, I mean, there's probably a million, there's a million things that parents did against the norm that is totally acceptable that we can't even imagine. So it's almost like maybe aligning them with that. Like I'm thinking about lead paint in cribs, or like kids not in car seats or something. Something that seems like maybe there's a way to set it up where it's like historically we change things to make them better, and just that was the first thing I thought of. I don't know.
Yeah, they're an early these parents are early adopters.
Yeah.
Right. So,
right.
They're at the leading edge of parenting by letting their young boy play with dolls. Yeah, I mean, look, you're the funny one here. So this is your hard work.
Sometimes that's the funny joke.
But I think it's worth doing only because it's a positive message. It's a fun premise. It works sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
And so
that feels like enough for me to get in the car and drive an hour to the show. Like that feels like actually enough.
It probably is it a joke? Is it a joke that you can't come back from?
I feel like sometimes, yeah, and that's why I feel like I really only pull it out when I know the crowd is on my side.
Yeah, I see.
Already, because I've suffered from them not being on my side with that joke.
The idea is, well, there's all these moving parts in that joke, and if you're willing to face the disappointment of enough audiences, if you value the joke enough, right? Well, maybe it's the case that now it's not you coming up to the family,
right?
But it's I have a friend who's this.
Or maybe my dad, who I've set up previously as very lovable, but that sort of thing.
Maybe it's so now you're not the protagonist. Someone else who's a better protagonist.
You can sort of shift it, and if in doing almost if people aren't on my side, I can almost shift it to somebody else saying that. What about? Yeah. In your interviews, because obviously you've interviewed and have picked the brains of so many comics, do they is me doing something like going back to the original this original onus of this joke was it was at like a Japanese market, and I literally saw a little boy playing with a doll, and I was with my boyfriend, and we were both like, it actually is so just sort of shot. It's like really a different thing to see. He was just pushing the stroller and he was a little boy, and we were like, but why do we have immediately think something's odd about that? And so looking at it that way, and I think almost maybe forgetting writing the joke in the first place and really taking it apart might be a good idea. Or that's the least funny thing you can do, and I should just put that joke in a scrapbook and toss it out.
I think the issue. So I will tell you this: I've talked to enough comics who don't like the idea that science is trying to explain what makes things funny.
Yeah, I and even comics who I talked to, who I told that I was interviewing you, thought the same thing. But I just come at things where I want to know as much as I possibly can, And to me, that makes it more interesting, and more interesting can make it more funny.
And the issue is so first of all, you can tell those comics they're being selfish, mostly.
Yes, thank you.
Because they think of themselves as magicians.
Magicians. They don't want the secrets out. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Now, the issue is, I think that anything that this important is worthy of scientific discovery. It's an important enough topic that you should be studying it using the techniques of science. That said, these magicians, whether they're magicians or they're comics, what happens behind the scenes can be quite mechanical.
Right.
It's not. It should seem like you're just coming up with this idea on stage, but the fact that you might deconstruct that joke totally, all the way down to a premise, and then build it up 5 different ways.
Right.
That's the best comics in the world do that.
Are doing
all
that.
the time. Actually, the worst comics don't do that stuff.
You're right. So it really is, I mean, it seems really heady and unnecessary to do that, but actually to build the best types of jokes, it's totally necessary. And that's why they tell you have to have a certain amount of hours as a stand-up, and why you have to have done it, Do you listen to a podcast? There's a podcast called The Jackie and Laurie Show.
Okay, no.
Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin. Jackie Cation is hilarious. Laurie's hilarious. Laurie's a writer on Conan. They're both female comics. They release one weekly, and they really created an interesting following, especially of female comics.
I'm writing this down.
Yeah, they're great. And something that I think that they do is exactly what you're saying, and what I feel like as a young comic in LA. I think they pull that curtain back, and they say which for a million reasons people have, especially the old guard, take issue with, but they pull the curtain back in a lot of ways, meaning like how much you should be getting paid for something, how people are booking things, how jokes are constructed, and so, but not only that, a big thing is sexism and how things are working, and they really just I think give a lot of people the heads up so that other people don't have to kind of get cut up the way that they were.
I think the way to think about it is comedy has been done a particular way, a particular way for a long time. And it gets perpetuated by the entertainment industry, and it gets perpetuated because, if you want to become a stand-up or an improviser, these are the things that you do. I just can't help but think that there are ways to cut the learning curve. There has to be, and so I think what's happening, like the Jackie and Laurie thing, is that's helping cut the learning curve. Right. In part because it's just talking honestly about the kinds of what's happening behind the scenes, and
I think the learning curve is much more harmful to others. And that's what I appreciate about them, is that they recognize that. I think especially for women that learning curve is actually much, it's like the most dangerous one there is. So it's something that I think would give, I think, a good perspective too to some of your research as well.
Indeed. You think about the way the system is set up to become a stand-up, right? It's this kind of trial and error. And where you do a lot of your learning is from your peers. Mm-hmm. And now it just so happens to be the case that most of your peers are 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, sometimes badly behaved men.
Yeah, right. So that's just rife for a rough environment.
Yes.
I'll make a comparison. One of my friends interviewed a female jazz musician. And in all of the worlds of sexism, I would probably guess it sort of goes like politics, comedy, jazz. And the difference, when we were talking about it, and what she realized is that in jazz, an important part of learning and is playing, practicing the same way I go up to a mic and practice my jokes. But you can't do that solo. In jazz, you have to practice with peers. It's the only way to get good and to get practice. So there's no way for you to go it alone. And if you are a woman, you are one of 50. And so it's especially difficult. But that's exactly it, is that I think looking at your peers and the people who you're practicing with, it's very obvious the type of environment that people are doing their homework in,
Yeah, so I'm working on a bunch of new ideas about, not about what makes things funny, but about the process of making things funny. This idea of sort of pulling back the curtain. We we do think of stand-ups as these sort of solitary, they're working alone with their notebook in a coffee shop.
Sure,
and,
yeah.
They're on the road on their own and so on. But it's impossible to become a great comic without collaborating with other people. So it's a long list,
yeah.
right? So it's obviously bookers and club, people and working well with the managers of the club and being nice to the staff, the wait staff.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the people who are helping you promote, and then obviously having a peer group,
right?
That you can talk about your ideas, that you can hire when you
right.
get hired by a show,
and then also who are going to independently produce shows and put you on those shows, and
That's right.
Yeah, it is. It's. I think most people may not realize how much of a comedy community there is, because you are just seeing somebody on a stage with a mic, and that's it.
And they may seem like a misanthrope.
Yeah.
But if you're truly a misanthrope, it's hard to get ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And also just no way to live, really.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we need people in our lives to some degree.
Yeah, right. I guess.
Well, here's the other one. Here's the dirty little secret of comedy, which is this is stereotypical male comics, is the girlfriend who pays the bills.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? Like, she's got the apartment.
She's providing the life that he's able to have. Even when you were saying the, when you think about the environments that you need to get good at practicing in, one of the reasons that, say, Ali Wong's special was such a mind blower for me, for her to shoot a Netflix special 7 months pregnant, it was such a mind blower because, and I've had, I have an all-female stand-up show, and I've had comics who will email me and be like, can you put me up later? I timed my breastfeeding wrong. And I'm like, this struggle, the amount of, because, and like you said, it's going up in mics and sitting around at night, and like, the best possible scenario for women is the opposite of how comedy works. Like, it's, becoming a mother, or like you said, it's much less likely, I think, that you're gonna find a lot of women who are stand-up comics who's, like you said, the boyfriend pays the bills, and and is totally okay with her being gone every night and touring, and whereas the girlfriend, at bars, whereas the girlfriend, it's just sort of assumed, and that's the reason that so many successful men have careers, but they're totally self-made and they've done it on their own.
That's exactly.
Do you have a favorite joke?
I currently have a favorite joke that I've been shamelessly telling.
I love it. Let's hear it.
How many hipsters does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know. What is it?
It's an obscure number. You probably wouldn't know it.
That's good. That's good. That's enjoyable. It's like just the right amount of stupid.
It's cheap. It's a cheap joke. But I do. Who
it's cheap
like
and great. It's cheap and great.